jars with water. So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. They did so. And the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He didn't realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and the disciples believed in him. I want to go back to verse number 6. It says, nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used for ceremonial, by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Come on, look at somebody beside you and say, a versatile vessel. Yeah, our kids 10 and under can be dismissed at this time. Everybody else take your seats and look at somebody close by you and say, a versatile vessel. Yeah, one of the worst feelings in the world is feeling like you have been used. Yeah, I thought I'd get some amens right there, right off the muscle. I knew I would, because it's true. Nobody wants to be used. Nobody wants to be taken advantage of. Don't get me wrong. I believe that at our core, most of us want to be givers. Most of us want to be a blessing to the world around us, and we especially want to pour into those that we love. But we often struggle with abundant giving because of the fear of being used. It's not that we're not generous at heart. It's not that we don't want to be open-handed. We just don't want somebody to pull the wool over our eyes, and we end up looking and feeling foolish because the spirit in which we gave was not the spirit in which it was received. We shouldn't do good because we want something in return, and we shouldn't display generosity with any type of expectation of reciprocity. That's not my argument this morning. I'm simply stating a fact of humanity that nobody wants to give when the recipient has no use for you, no emotion for you, and no tie to you other than what you have to give to them. And let's be honest, because most of us have got this fear because we have at least once before been a victim of exploitation. Yeah, I believe that many of us were once naive and completely open until the first time that we got taken for a ride. Everybody in here can quickly recollect someone that they feel used them. Some of us were used for our connections, and some of us were used for our resources, and some of us were used for our emotional support, and some of us were used. All of us have realized that there was only one person that was invested in the relationship, and that person was us. We've been used by our bosses for our expertise, and we've been used by politicians for support at election time, and we've been used by companies for free advertisement, and we've been used by the enemy for his schemes and his plans. Come on and say, we've all been used. Yeah, but once you've been used one time, it becomes a little easier to recognize. Once we've been used, then we can detect it a little quicker than we can before. That's not to say that it will never happen again, but once we've been taken advantage of, it becomes easier and easier to know when the okie doke is in process again. And I don't know about you, but I've finally gotten to the point in my life where I will not allow just everybody to use me. I've gotten too old and I've come through too much to just sit back and allow myself to be taken advantage of by any and everyone. I've learned some stuff, and I've experienced some disappointments that have caused me to be cautious about the outpour of my life. I'm still a giver, and I'm still a pourer. I'm still a sower, but I can't let just anybody use me. I'm still open, and I'm still a supporter. supporter and I'm still a helper, but I'm godly cautious. I said godly cautious about who and what I let use me. Because let me tell you what I have discovered. The only person that really knows how to use me the right way is God. Everything that I give to him in his service and for his purpose and in his work, in every way that I will allow God to use me, I never end up feeling humiliated or taken advantage of. When God uses me, it's never one-sided. When God uses me, I never end up hurt. When God uses me, I never end up broken. God is the only one that I don't mind if he uses me. You know why? Because after he used me, God never refused to answer my call. After he used me, God never avoided me the next time I needed him. After he used me, God never disappeared when I was looking for him. That's why I can say without a hint of hesitation, God, I don't mind if you use me. And not only do I not mind if God uses me, I also don't care how he uses me. I want to be a versatile vessel. I want to be used however God sees fit. Let me just teach us right here, beloved. All of us must be willing to be used by God. All of us must be willing to do whatever God needs us to do. It's not just the preachers that need to be used, and it's not just the deacons that need to be used. It's not just the singers and musicians that need to be used. God needs each and every one of us to be used as versatile vessels. Somebody in here needs to be used in your home, and somebody in here needs to be used on the street corner, and somebody needs to be used tomorrow in the break room. Somebody needs to be used on social media. But I want us to be very clear that the only reason we are here on this earth is to be used for the glory of God. Do you mind repeating after me and say, I'm just here to be used? Yeah, come on, say it one more time. Say, I'm just here to be used. I'm not here to get discovered, and I'm not here to be a CEO, and I'm not here for likes and shares. God put me here to be used. He didn't wake you up this morning to be seen. He didn't wake you up for you to be rich. He didn't bless you for you to be admired. God put me here to be used. God didn't put me here for anybody else's pleasure. And God didn't put me here just to be somebody's shoulder. God put me here to be used. I need somebody to look up for glory in this house and say, I'm here to be used. To say it like you mean it in this house. Come on and look up and say, the only reason I'm here is so that I can be used. He put me here to be a vessel. And I got to be versatile. Let me tell you more. First of all, let's talk about a versatile vessel. First of all, a versatile vessel is in the proper place. In this Bible story today, I want to focus not on the bridegroom and not on the wine and not on Mary and not on the wedding. I want us to focus on the vessels. Remember it said, nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kinds used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. These stone jars were the vessels that Jesus used to perform his first miracle. These vessels were key to Jesus' first public display of who he was and his deity. It was the vessels that were used to hold the miracle. It was the vessels that contained irrefutable proof of Jesus' power. It was the vessels that were versatile enough to be at the Lord's disposal and to be used as he required. Listen, these vessels that we're talking about today would normally be used for the washing of hands and for the washing of utensils or for the washing of other vessels. But on this day and at this moment, they were ready to be used for whatever the Lord needed. It says they stood nearby. Some scholars say that they were there in the midst of the feast, and some scholars say that they were in the outer court in the vestibule, but wherever they were in the proper place to be used. Yes. I know these are just stone pots, but can we learn something from these vessels this morning? People of God, we've got to make sure that our positions remain proper and correct. Yes. We've got to stay in the right place. As soon as Mary looked around, the vessels were right there. Not only exactly where they needed to be, but also in close proximity to Jesus. I came to argue this morning that if we stay in the proper place, it will always keep us nigh to Jesus. My fear today, people of God, is that we are straying from our rightful place and we're getting too far from the Lord. All right. We have established priorities that leave us far from where God needs us to be. Our financial decisions take us too far from God. So we end up struggling instead of tithing. Yes. Our fleshly decisions take us too far from God. So we end up compromising instead of standing firm. Yes. Our priorities take us too far from God. So we spend more time pleasing ourselves than we do pleasing Jesus Christ. Amen. So we must begin to reestablish proper positioning so that we can experience proper usage. The closer we stay to God and His Word, the easier it is for us to be used. But if I'm always out of place, more of my time with God is going to be spent on repeated restoration when it could be spent on greater elevation. Let me say that again. If I'm always out of place, then more of my time with God has got to be spent on repeated restoration than is spent on greater elevation. Let me see if I can make it plainer. The miracle would have taken longer if Jesus had to go looking for the vessels. The miracle would have been smaller if half of the pots would have been out of place. The miracle would have been delayed if the vessels were fallen and scattered. But the Bible says that the 6 stone vessels stood nearby to Jesus in the proper place, ready to be used. Will you talk to your neighbor one time for me this morning and tell them stay close? Stay close. Yeah, look back at him and say, you don't know what God's going to do with you. Yeah, if you just stay close. You don't know what plans that God has for you if you just stay close. But if we keep straying and if we keep backsliding and if we keep falling away, we might miss the greatest purpose of our life. Come on and look at somebody you hadn't talked to and say, stay close. It's time for us to open up our hearts and worship so we can stay close. It's time for us to be faithful in our service in ministry so we can stay close. It's time for us to stop our disobedience in our giving so we can stay close. It's time for us to quit giving the world more time than the Savior so we can stay close. Because if we stay close, we're going to be amazed at what God is going to use us for. Is it anybody in the house this morning that'll just wave your hand if you know you want to be used, but you know you got to get closer? Now, I'm preaching to some real folks in the house today that'll say, PK, I know I want God to use me, but I know I strayed a little bit too far away sometimes. Now, I want some people like me in this house that'll say, God, I want the maximum usage, but I know I've been giving you the minimum time. Now, is there anybody in the house this morning that'll say, I want to be used by God, but I know I want to be closer? Then I dare you to throw your head back and open up your mouth as loud as you can and look up towards the glory and say, I want to be closer. Yeah, don't say it to God if you don't mean it. But I want us to really search our hearts in here today. I want some people like me that have gone too far and stayed too long. That'll say, God, I want to be closer. I remember when my cousin used to sing that song for me, and I didn't really understand it for myself. But when I found myself closer. God, I want to be used, but I know I went too far. God, I want to be used, but I know I strayed away. Somebody say closer. Come on, say closer. Come on, say closer. A versatile vessel stays in its proper place. The second thing about a versatile vessel, Lexi, is a versatile vessel is willing to be emptied. I'll be honest, Mr. Sherman, what perplexed me about this text was the fact that the vessels were empty. Because see, if they were for ceremonial washing, it would make sense that they would be full of water. But verse 7 says that Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water, so they filled them to the brim. So I began to contemplate and I said, well, maybe it's just implied in the text that they should be emptied of whatever was in them and then they would be refilled with water. But I can't say that because the Bible didn't say it. It simply said, fill the jars with water. So I can't draw a definite conclusion. But what I can glean from the text is that in order to be used by Jesus, the vessels had to be emptied of whatever was in them in order to be filled. Perhaps they were empty, or perhaps, Sherelle, they were filled with dirty water from where the guests had washed when they had arrived. I don't know. But what I do know is that before they could be used, they had to be versatile enough to be emptied so that they could get filled. And this is the second point of our lesson today. No matter what we are full of this morning, God is going to need us to be emptied before we can be used. We may have to be willing to get rid of whatever is in us before God can replace it with something else. I'm not saying that anybody in here is full of bad stuff. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that we've had stuff in us before that wasn't good for a season. But what I'm saying is that we've got to be versatile enough to get rid of whatever was in us in order to be filled with what God wants to put in us. Too many times we think that we can hold on to the contents of the past and still be filled with the blessings of the future. We want to be filled, not realizing that we're already full. We want to be filled with God's aroma, but we're already full of the enemy's essence. We want to be filled with God's peace, but we're full of the enemy's drama. We want to be filled with God's forgiveness, but we're full of the enemy's judgment. But before God can put a new thing in us, we got to empty the old stuff out of us. We got to be versatile. We've got to be willing to be changed. We've got to be willing to be empty. Come on and tell somebody beside you, get it all out. Get it all out. Yeah, God told me to tell the people of God today, you can't hold on to a drop of it. We can't have 1 foot in the kingdom and 1 foot in the world. Tell somebody else, get it all out. But can I just testify for real in here today? I don't know about you, but there's still some stuff in me that's taking up some room where God needs to put something else. I'm fully realizing, Rosalind, that I am a vessel that is yet to be fully emptied of all my old stuff so that God can put a new thing in me. Is there anybody in here like me this morning that knows that you got some stuff that needs to go? Is there anybody in the house today that's got some stuff that you know that you need God to get up out of you? Somebody in here has got some bitterness, and somebody in here has got some pain, and somebody in here has got some habits, and somebody in here has got some messed up thoughts, and you know that before God can do a new thing in you, he's got to get the old stuff out of you. I dare you to look up and talk to Jesus one more time and say it with a real sincere heart this morning and say, get it out of me. I need some people in here that got some stuff that's bubbling up to just about right here. I know you got your church clothes on, and I know you look saved and sanctified, but if you're anything like me, you still got some stuff down on the inside that if you got pushed real hard, it'll pop out before you know it. that I know I need to get rid of. I dare you to high five somebody and say, I know you got some stuff, because I got some stuff. Oh, but I'm ready to be used by God. I'm ready for him to take everything out of me. I want God to take anything that's not like him, and I want him to snatch it out by the roots. Take out all my wretchedness. Take out all my pettiness. Take out all my lustfulness. Take out all my jealousy. Anything that's in me, God, that is not like you, I need you to get it all out. Now I dare you to look up towards glory one more time and have a conversation with the Lord and say, get it out of me, God. And don't stop until I'm empty. Get it out of me, God. And don't stop until I'm empty. I don't want nothing in me that is not like you. I want to be a willing vessel. And this mess that I've been carrying, this mess that I've been holding, I know it ain't fit for your use. So empty me out, God. Empty me out, God. Empty me out, God. And don't stop till I'm empty. Somebody holler empty in here. I want to be empty before the Lord. I want to be a blank canvas. I want to be an empty vessel. I want to be used by him. But I know I got some stuff, because a versatile vessel is always willing to change. Because the pot had been used for one thing, but Jesus called it to a new purpose. It had always done one thing, but God needed it to do somebody else. And God told me to tell somebody, he said, I'm looking for some versatile vessels that are willing to make a change in order to meet God's demand. God is looking for some vessels that are willing to be changed in order to be used. And if that's you in this house, if you want to be a versatile vessel, can you talk to God for the third time and say, empty me out, God, and fill me with something better? Come on, say, empty me out, God, and fill me with something better. I know what I had in me. I know what I've been carrying. I know what my reputation is. I know what it says downtown. I know what I did in high school. I know what I'm known for in college. God, but empty me out and fill me with something better. Is there anybody in this house that wants God to fill you with something a little bit better than what you always carried? I always carried gossip. I always carried filth. I always carried jealousy. Oh, but God, I'm ready today for you to fill me with something better. We can just fist bump somebody and say, I want to carry something different. I want to carry something different. I want to carry God's word everywhere. I want to carry God's word in my heart. I want to carry his commandments. I want to carry the aroma of Jesus. I'm tired of carrying around all the enemy stuff, and I'm ready to make a change. Are there any people in the house this morning that'll say, I know what I've been. I know where I came from. I know what I used to be. But God, I'm ready to be changed, and I need you to use me for something different. If that's you in this house, and you're ready to make a change, you're ready to live for Jesus. I ain't saying you ain't saved. I said do something different. I said be versatile for Jesus. I said get your new assignment. I said find out your new purpose. If that's you in this house, and God has emptied you, and you're ready to be changed, then open up your mouth and say, God, I'm ready. It's time for a refill. God, Jesus made the wine, the people at the wedding had already drunk too much. And then you got 6 more jars, about 30 gallons each. And I in the Bible, that's what the Bible said. So if they were already drunk and the feast was already over and all the pots got filled, then somewhere, Sharonda, there had to be some overflow. There had to be something left after everybody was gone. God, I want you to give me more than enough for everybody connected to me. God, I want you to use me to be a blessing for generations to come. God, I want you to send me so much that all the people around me can enjoy the blessing of my life and there still be overflow. I want the wine in my vessel to bless the kingdom of God for years to come. Will you high five somebody and say, if you get empty, you can be used for overflow. If you get empty, you can be used for overflow. So take out all my mess and give me a refill and then leave enough, God, so I can bless everybody. Somebody open up your mouth and say, refill me. Make me the overflow. Refill me. Make me the overflow for my children. Make me the overflow for my family. Make me the overflow, God, for my ministry. Make me the overflow. I'm willing to change. I'm willing to get emptied and fill me up. Somebody throw your hands up and say, make me the overflow. Now I want you to understand what it means in this house. For everything connected to you, if you become a willing vessel, then God can make you the source of the, come on and lift up your hands. Get your family on your mind, and get your children on your mind, and get your spouse on your mind, and get your parents on your mind, and say, God, make me the overflow for everything connected to me. Come on, keep them up, keep them up. If you gotta strip me, if you gotta empty me, if you gotta bleed me out, God, make me the overflow for everything connected to my house, for the people that just show up. The overflow that everybody that runs into me happenstance. Make me the overflow for everybody I open my mouth to. God, make me the, I need you to open up your mouth in here and say, God, make me the overflow for everything connected to me. And I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about Jesus. Make me the overflow. Let the anointing on my life spill out on everybody connected. Let me set my children on fire and set my children's children on fire. When I walk into the workplace, fill me with overflow to everything I'm connected to. Make me stand in Jesus' sight and say, let me put some more in her, because she's willing to be. Make me the overflow for everything connected to me. I'm versatile. I'm versatile. I'm versatile. I do it in the street. I do it on my job. I do it with my children. I represent you in my home. I'm versatile. I don't need but 2 or 3. I'll do it for 1,000 bucks. change me and use me. I'm versatile. I'm the vessel that God can use.
Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah.
If he can use me, he can use anybody. So don't you think that God can't use you.
Yes.
But God needs the vessel.
Yes.
He needs us to be changed. And let me just teach this last point. In the Bible, these vessels that were for ceremonial washing, they had to be pure vessels. They had to be pure. And if they became impure for any reason, then they had to be broken. So let me encourage somebody that's going through in the house today.
Yes. Thank you, God.
God might be breaking you.
Yes.
So that you can be used for something new.
Hallelujah.
Something may have come in between him and you. Between the purpose he had. So it's not that he's not going to use you because you're broken. Don't let the church tell you that. Impure vessels had to be broken. I don't know about you today, but I am an impure vessel. And many times, God has had to break me, Sherelle, just before he used me more. So if you're in here and you feel yourself shattering, if you got some cracks and some stuff is leaking, it's only so that God can form with you the right vessel to do the right work at the right time. And I don't care what the world says you should be used for. These were not wine vessels. These were washing vessels. But when Jesus spoke, he said, this vessel is for what I say it's for. I know what they did. I know what their reputation is. I know what they're guilty of. But now they do what I say they do. No matter what the world says. The doors of the church are open. If there's someone here